Thank you, everyone. Welcome back as always. Today we have a super special guest. I'm joined by none other than Rob Berger. Hello, Rob.
Andy, how you doing?
I am swell. Thanks for joining, Rob. I'm very much looking forward to this.
I am too.
So I got this little bit I do before I get into it with dad jokes. And I just want to let you know, this morning I called the Paranoia hotline. The guy answered, said, "How did you get this number?" You know?
That's awful.
It's so bad, it's good. Yes.
I must be at that right demographic because that makes me laugh.
That's what I go for. It's part cringe, part laugh. Then you know it's a success. So, quick background. For those who don't know Rob, you should, going forward. He is a celebrity within this space. He has a large YouTube channel, getting closer to 300,000 viewers or subscribers at this point. I think it was 260-something last I checked. Prolific creator in this space, very knowledgeable, very thorough. I've used a lot of your content to get insight and updates, and you do a tremendous job staying on top of the personal finance world. You're also the creator of Dough Rollers, which I don't know where that stands at this point, right? But people may know you from that. So before we really get into the formal questions here, can you just maybe give quick background of yourself, where you came from? I know you were a lawyer in a prior life, just sort of what got you up to where we are today.
Sure. Yeah, I was a lawyer in Washington, D.C. for about 25 years. First technology litigation at a big firm. I went to the government and did work at the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, which regulates auditors of publicly traded companies. I was in the enforcement division. And at that time, at one point, I said to my wife that I was bored with the practice of law. It's not nearly as exciting as TV would make it look, although I enjoyed it. But in any event, she said, "Well, why don't you get a hobby anyway?" That led to me starting Dough Roller, which you alluded to a minute ago, which at the time was just, I've shut it down. I sold it, bought it back, and then shut it down. But it was a personal finance website. And for me, it was, this was back in 2007. And it was kind of cool to build a website. I'd never done that before. And I was really focused on personal finance and investing. And so it just sort of made sense. Over time, though, that turned into a business. I wasn't expecting that. It was just a hobby when I started it. And that let me eventually retire from law in my late 40s. I ran that business. I sold it in 2018. Went to work for Forbes. Wasn't a plan. They just called me up after they learned I sold it and said, "Hey, you want to come start part of our website for us?" So I did that for a couple of years. Then wrote a book, Retired Before Mom and Dad. Then left Forbes and started the YouTube channel. And ended up buying Dough Roller back and shutting it down. That's another story. Happy to tell it, but started the YouTube channel as I still try to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And now here I am talking to you, and that's pretty much the story.
All right, great summary. And so you are still in D.C. or one of the surrounding states?
In Northern Virginia.
Okay. And you mentioned you're married, so you do have a significant other. Now, what would you call your retirement status? I know YouTube, you're very actively engaged in that, and I'm assuming you don't have to share, but I'm assuming there's some sort of, monetization of something, ad revenue, whatever. But do you view yourself retired, or do you have any other businesses per se at this point?
So when I sold Dough Roller back in 2018, I was absolutely retired, no other sources of income. We're going to live off our investments. I ended up getting that job at Forbes, which more or less paid for our expenses, maybe not 100%. So I was kind of maybe semi-retired.
Okay.
And then I retired from that job 2 years later. Now I'm fully retired, living off our investments, and I decided to start the YouTube channel and focus on robberger.com, which is a website that I have. They ended up doing better than I expected. So I know this is a long answer to what should be a simple question. At this point, we're able to live off of the income. Not YouTube provides per se, but YouTube and the website provide. So financially, at the moment, I would say no, I'm not retired. In terms of lifestyle, I'm absolutely retired. I mean, I probably spend 5 to 10 hours a week on YouTube. Very little on the website at the moment. I'm actually spending most of my time writing a novel, which makes absolutely nothing, of course. Well, we'll see how it does when I publish it. It probably won't make much more than nothing then. But so yeah, financially, probably not retired because we have this income stream.
Yeah.
But certainly in terms of my daily life, I spend more time doing other things than I do, say, YouTube and the website.
Right. Do you plan on stopping this at some point, or do you enjoy it and you view this as a hobby that happens to make you income as well?
I think it's the perfect retirement scenario. You're doing something that you enjoy. You're doing something that is useful and helpful to people, hopefully, on a good day.
Yeah.
And it happens to make money. So, I don't have any plans to stop. If I were to live till I'm 95, it's kind of hard to imagine I'll still be doing it then. But
Yeah.
I don't have any plans to stop at the moment.
Okay. And how old are you now, if you don't mind sharing?
I am almost 60, but not quite.
Okay.
I know. I know. I can see the stunned look on your face. You were expecting me to say 68 or something, but
I thought you were going to say 17. I don't know.
yeah, right. What a salesman. I'm in my late 50s. I let's put it this way: I cannot yet take money out of an IRA without a 10% penalty.
Got it. Okay. Very clear. So not yet 59 and a half. I'm sure.
Not yet.
I'm
getting close.
That nerdy reference. Yeah.
Yeah.
This next question may not really apply, or you sort of answered it, but priorities or goals for your retirement. I mean, it sounds like you're in retirement, but you're not. Do you have anything major you or your wife would like to do that would change your plans, perhaps, of what you do, where you live, how much time you spend on content, YouTube, et cetera?
And not specifically, not like that. The hardest, and this I don't know if you'll get to this later, but the hardest part of retirement for me, I thought retirement would be easy because I have a lot of interests and hobbies and whatnot. But when I actually started getting into it, it proved to be more challenging because as you get older, you realize, your time on this rock is diminishing. You only have so many shots at things. Not that I'm that old, but still, I'm not 25. And so there's almost this angst of what should I do? How should I spend my time? And I found that to be a hard thing to figure out, much harder than I would have thought. And so part of my goal is just figuring that out. And I think I have for now, but it changes over time. I mean, like what I'm doing today is different than what I was doing even a year ago in terms of how I fill up my day. So that is consumed a lot of my time and thinking and trying to figure out just how I want to spend my day. I think my wife has, similar thoughts about what she wants to do. In terms of together as a family, we spend a lot of time with our family. And so that we invest a lot of time there, both immediate family and extended family. But we don't have any sort of bucket list. There's not like 12 spots on the globe we want to travel to, but while we can, or anything like that. Maybe we should come up with a bucket list, but we don't really have one at the moment.
Do you see your interests and priorities changing? Like you said, you have a lot of things that you like to do, but trying to find what to do, how to fill the time. Do you get bored? Is that a
yes
part of your personalities? Okay. Yeah, I'm the same.
My MO is, I have some goal, something I want to try to do. And if I accomplish it, I lose interest. So like
what's next?
When I started out in law, I was at a big firm and the goal was to make partner, which I did. I left 2 years later. And I was at the PCAOB and the goal was sort of to make associate director, which kind of like partner there and, try some cases and get some experience. And that was great. I did that. And then I left.
Okay.
And so I kind of feel that way. I see that pattern in my life. And I think one of the goals now that I have is to publish a novel. And it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. I was working on it, just a few minutes ago. And I'm still a long way off from something that I can publish, but I think that's my next thing that I want to do.
Then I guess once that's done and in circulation, you'll move on from being the writer onto the next goal, probably, right?
I could. That may be. I kind of hope not. I'm tired of. I kind of like to just focus on a few things and stick with it. I mean, the YouTube channel, I kind of view that as having been successful. So, following my MO, I might just move on from that. But I don't plan to do it. To do that, although I am sort of changing how I think about my approach to YouTube. So we'll see. I don't know.
Okay. Very good. Are you comfortable sharing anything about the novel, or keep it under wraps until it's out?
It's a suspense sort of mystery thriller. I guess no surprise there. It has some sort of astronomy references or aspects to it, and religious components. It tries to tackle some big questions, like why are we here? What's the nature of reality? Those unanswerable questions that at least I tend to wrestle with from time to time.
Looking forward to it. I feel you. I have those same thoughts and issues I try to wrangle in my head that can't be solved or can't be answered, but still like to ponder them. So I'm very curious.
It's a clear indication, Andy, that we have too much time on our hands.
Something's got to be. There's no other logical explanation. Now, there's a lot of fun facts about yourself. We already touched on a bunch, but outside of the things we already know, anything really sort of off the wall, random that you think people would get a kick out of knowing about you, something interesting you did, or whatever it may be?
Well, I don't think most people would know this. So and just what we were talking about, I spend a lot of time thinking about and reading things like, physics, astrophysics, astronomy. By the way, I don't understand most of what I read. I certainly don't understand the math. I was an English major. But I enjoy reading this sort of thing. And I have not ruled out the idea that we live in a simulation. That strikes me as a very appealing prospect. Not appealing from the sense of it would be fun to live in a simulation, but just from explaining the universe as we understand it. Again, I don't understand the math behind these sorts of theories at all, but I enjoy reading about them, and there's something about that that just seems to fit for me. Yeah.
Do you mean sort of like we're in the Matrix, for lack of a better analogy? Or?
Well, that might be one way to think of it. But yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, there's interesting questions because, science and religion have had this sort of, I would say, not a love-hate relationship, maybe a hate-hate relationship historically. And I think you tend to see people in one or the other camp for the most part. But I think the risk is, depending on whatever camp you're in, you rule out possibilities because they are just contrary to, your core belief. And I think that's the biggest risk. And in the world of science, we're talking about the Big Bang Theory, but the big question for me is, well, what happened before that?
Yeah.
And, the Big Bang, where did it happen? It happened here. Well, what does that even mean? What was here before that? Nothing? These are just big questions that, of course, I don't pretend to be able to answer or even understand the theories, but I like to think about them and read about them.
Yeah, it's fun to hypothesize, definitely. So now a lot of these questions may not fit cleanly given your background and how involved and knowledgeable you are in all of this, but let's try it and see what happens. So now, when did you start? It's the best I can do here. I'm trying.
Yeah, it's all good.
When did you start getting serious about planning for your retirement, not just the retirement info you share with others, but like your retirement? Was there a point in time along the way in your job that things clicked?
June 12th, 2005.
Are you joking or are you serious?
No, I'm serious.
Oh, do tell.
So, and I have the reason I know the date is I have it written down on a piece of paper somewhere. I'm not particularly a Dave Ramsey fan. I've never really followed his steps, but of course know who he is. And on that day, I was listening to one of his shows. I don't remember why. And so at this point, I hadn't started Dough Roller. I'm practicing law. I'm down in my shop at the house we used to live in, and it was one of those episodes where people would come on and scream that they're debt-free. That's, a big part of his program. And something just clicked for me. And I said, and I decided then that forget nice cars, forget some sort of lifestyle. I want my freedom. I want financial freedom. So I didn't think of it then in terms of retirement and quitting my job per se. It was more in terms of financial freedom. And so I set out a goal. I'd be totally debt-free in 10 years, including the mortgage. And I did not meet that goal. It took me longer than that. But it actually was probably what sparked Dough Roller in 2007, which turned into a business. And eventually we reached that goal. But my whole approach to money and even life, I think, started to change on that day.
Okay. Interesting. I've yet to have someone that can pin it to an exact date, so it's very cool that you did. That's why I almost thought you were joking, like just trying to pick a date out of the air.
It was just, you just have this moment and you remember it, something happened.
Right.
And I remember writing it down. I said on this paper, I wrote the date and said, I will be debt free, and I just put the date 10 years later.
Oh, cool. So this next question kind of ties into this. You may have answered it, but what resources do you find helpful in learning about retirement planning? Sounds like Dave Ramsey, not that you were a follower per se, but that debt snowball and debt-free scream thing was part of your planning, it sounds like. But anything else you thought was helpful to you in your journey about being financially free, or whatever you choose to call it?
I think, the things like budgeting and getting out of debt, those are sort of the nuts and bolts. And there's a lot of different sources that you could, reach for that kind of thing. I think the more important thing for me was, I didn't understand it then as the bogleheads, but this is how you would describe it today, is index fund investing. Now, I think by 2005, I was already investing in index funds. I'd made that switch maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years earlier. But understanding the power of compounding, low fees, generally index fund investing. I think I read my first book that I really remember reading, and it may not have been my first, but the first one I remember is Rick Ferry's All About Asset Allocation. And it just made sense to me. I remember selling Bill Miller's Legg Mason Value Trust Fund, which had beat the S&P for 15 years, a remarkable record until it crashed. And I don't think it exists anymore. But I sold out of that when it was still on its run. I don't remember what year it was, but I think he ended up losing. I think the tech bubble did him in, as I recall. But in any event, I made that switch to index funds predominantly. I don't own any actively managed funds. I do own some single stock investments, which is not a boglehead thing to do. The irony there, by the way, is my stock portfolio has outperformed the S&P 500 since I started it, but that's only because of Apple. So I got lucky. Okay. In any event, the index fund, boglehead kind of approach to investing was really important.
Okay.
To me, yeah.
I think that's a great anchor for a lot of people, and most people listening now and that follow you are aligned with that as well. So, is there anything you wish you would have known or done differently when you were younger? Now, maybe it was before the 2005 date, maybe it was after 2005 date, but
I would have to go back before graduating from law school. If I could go back in time, knowing what I know today, not about the markets, but just about investing, I would have started investing in high school. But I worked hard in high school, and I worked in college. I worked while I was in law school, but I didn't save a nickel. On the bright side, I didn't go into debt. I went into school debt, but I didn't have credit card debt. But I spent every dime I made from high school, college, law school. And if I could do it over again, I would have absolutely been investing back then. Hopefully in Berkshire, but who knows what I would have actually picked. Yeah. But I would have started investing back then. Okay. I think after I got out of law school, saving was really important to me. I felt like if a paycheck went by and I didn't save any of it, I was just treading water. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I probably could have, that event in 2005, it would have been nice if I'd had that epiphany in 1995. But that's okay. There's a time and place for everything. So
hindsight's always 20/20. Do you work with an advisor, or have you ever? I don't think you have, so maybe let me add on to that. Would you ever consider it? And this isn't a pitch for advisory services. Those who listen to the show know that's not what this is about, but I'm curious your view about the advisory business, since you know the industry so well.
Yeah. I don't really work with advisors. I say it that way because I do have an annual subscription with Mark Zorel of, I don't know if you know him, but he's of Planning Vision. Mm-hmm. It's very inexpensive, but he doesn't manage anything. I like his service and what he does, and he and I'll chat maybe once a year. I had his team do a Roth conversion analysis for me. We were looking at whether what I call a mega Roth conversion makes any sense, where I just convert the whole thing right now.
Yep. And where'd you land on that?
Mathematically, it actually looked pretty good. I mean, of course, you got to make, a truckload of assumptions.
Yeah, yeah.
And who knows how those play out. But I was surprised because obviously, well, not obviously, but most of that conversion would be in the highest tax bracket. But it's going to change your IRMA analysis when I get to that age and my wife gets to that age. And I don't know that it would save us from Social Security tax, but you have all these other factors. And of course, one could argue that, the tax brackets as we know them can only go up, but who knows if that's true. They may find other creative ways to take our money. But in any event, so he did that analysis for me. But that's really about it. At some point, I'm going to need an advisor, probably. Either because as I get older and, mentally, even if I don't have some major cognitive decline, just from aging, am I going to be managing all of this when I'm 93?
Right.
Without help? I don't know. It makes me a little nervous. I also worry a little bit about, my wife's not interested in any of this. My kids really aren't. Any of this, I mean, just investing and understanding. I mean, the concepts behind index funds are not complicated, as you well know, but you got to know what they are to have some confidence in what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just scared to death.
Yeah.
Even if you do have the confidence, you might still be scared to death, right? And they just don't have an interest in learning that. So that I haven't solved that completely.
Okay.
Because I don't really want to work with an advisor right now, but at some point I may have to. If I did, it certainly would not be on an AUM basis.
Sure.
Yeah.
And perfect segue to the next question. So it sounds like your wife not actively engaged or involved in the financial stuff. I guess you're in the scene. I can see why not, because you're obviously all over it in a good way. Does that tie into your considerations for maybe an advisor at some point, if not for you per se, but if and when you're no longer here or not willing and able to do it, to help out for your wife's sake?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. Okay. I mean, I've got a lot of documentation that she'll be able to have. I've started putting together videos where just like this, but I'm showing my screen. One of the things that I did that I think would be helpful to her is things she doesn't need to worry about in the first year. Because one of the things I've told her, I said, if I get hit by a truck, just leave the investments alone. You don't do anything with them. Ignore them. You could ignore them for a decade. I mean, you're going to need to spend some of it. Probably her biggest hurdle is understanding the business.
Right.
Because, I've got all these things in motion in the business, but that's a different issue. But even something simple like, well, where do I go to get money out from? Which account do I choose? How do I do that? It's not like it's automated in the sense that cash just magically shows up in the checking account. So that's a work in progress. One thing I'm doing is before I cross the street, I look both ways.
That's wise advice for anyone. Yeah.
But that's not good enough, and so I really need to figure that out better. But I do have a lot of information that she'll have, or the kids would have, to look at.
Going back to that looking both ways, I learned when I was learning to drive, I think you look left, right, then left again. And the reason why I look left twice is because driving on the right side of the road, if someone's coming at you, they're going to be coming from your left. That's sound advice. I'm still in this habit to this day. Anytime I'm about to pull into an intersection, left, right, left again, and then finally go, or not go, whatever. All right, so you are not yet 65. We know you don't work for an employer. I assume you don't, that has health care coverage. You are self-employed. So what do you and your wife do for medical benefits at this point?
We pay a lot of money. That's what we do. We just shovel it out the door every month. So I buy the insurance as a business policy through my own company. I have a friend who's an insurance broker, and we have good. It's a high deductible policy, so we pay into an HSA as well, which we're not spending. It's a lot of money. It's a truckload. Yeah. So my wife will qualify for Medicare a little before I will. Hopefully she's not up there listening, and I just gave away her age. But
I won't say anything.
Yeah. So that will change, obviously, in a couple of years. So, but yeah, we're just paying a big bill every month through the business.
Now, So the good thing about being self-employed is I assume you're doing the self-employed health insurance deduction, right?
Yep.
That at least helps on your tax return. Fun fact to those that don't know, when you're on Medicare, that as well applies for self-employed health insurance deduction if you're still in your business and running your business at the time. So that'll save you some on taxes.
Good to know.
And your spouse as well, by the way. So even if she's not at all involved in your business, you can deduct both your and her premiums, not just base, but also supplemental plans as self-employed health insurance deductions under your business.
Nice.
Score. See, there you
I
go.
like it.
This is worth the price of admission, this show. All right. Social Security, what's your thoughts and views as of now for your claiming strategy for you and your wife?
So I will definitely wait until I'm 70. So I'll have the higher benefit amount. I will definitely wait until I'm 70. And then I suspect my wife, for a variety of reasons, will claim as soon as she's 62. When you run it through different tools like Open Social Security, depending on your discount amount that you assume, sometimes you could see her maybe waiting a little bit, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense in most analysis for her to wait
Right.
that much. So I suspect she'll claim it at 62 in a month. I think it'll have to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of splitting hairs in a couple. The higher earning spouse typically delay as long as possible, barring any known health issues for one or both of the spouses where it would substantially cut life expectancy short. But the historically lower earning spouse, I don't want to say it doesn't matter. I hate saying that, but it almost doesn't matter. Take it at 62, at 64, you're just tweaking on the margins, and based on your assumptions, you can come up with a different optimized answer, but whatever. Whenever you wake up one day.
I don't know if you ever looked at Prelana, which is a retirement planning tool. It used to be just spreadsheet based. It's now online. It's not my go-to tool, but it has pretty neat Social Security analysis, and it generates this sort of colored grid that shows you, again, based on a whole bunch of assumptions, optimal claiming strategies. But when you look at like the difference between 62 and 63, or 63 and 3 months versus 6 months, it's negligible. It's not a huge difference. But in some cases it could be. Certainly if you start to delay much longer or take it too soon. I mean, from everything I've read, the biggest mistake that most people make is taking it too soon. But of course, I put mistake in air quotes, right? Because some people need to take it when they need to take it because they need the money, and that's understandable.
Exactly. Everyone's answer is going to be different, and that could be right for them. So, long-term care event, and how are you planning for addressing paying for that if and when it comes? Insurance route, self-fund, tap home equity, anything else?
I mean, it'll be self-funded.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll pay for it ourselves. I mean, in my mind, home equity would cover it if need be. But I looked at insurance. The problem with long-term care insurance, and of course you know it much better than I do, but it's expensive. I don't know that any insurance is capped in terms of premiums. Maybe there are, but everyone I know that has it, their premiums are going up.
Yeah.
And its benefits quite limited. It's a certain amount per day or month and for a period of time. And so when I looked at the maximum benefit that it would provide, I looked at that number and I just said, yeah, we can cover that.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have to cover more than that because we also have to cover the part that insurance wouldn't, but it just didn't make sense to me. And when I talk to people that have it and they've had it for a while, and it's gotten more and more expensive, just a couple of relatives of ours, they were saying, yeah, we hate to give it up because we've paid so much into it.
The sunk cost fallacy, yeah.
Right, well, right, but I get it. I get that, and so they could be paying for another decade without needing it. So
yeah,
I guess that's the nature of insurance. You in a way, you sort of, you buy life insurance, but you hope you don't need it, right? So I get that. But yeah, I think we're just going to, it doesn't make sense for us. I don't think it makes sense for most people. There could be some in a certain, a slice of net worth and whatnot where it might make sense, but
yeah,
I'm not sold on it.
That's my views as well. I struggle with this and what the right answer is, and I don't know if there is one, but at certain levels of net worth, you can self-fund. Really low levels of net worth, you can't afford the premiums. It's going to be too much of a lifestyle impact. So you're going to, when an event happens, you're just going to spend down what you have and have Medicaid kick in. It's folks in that middle range,
Yeah.
and there's not like hard bounds on what that income or net worth is, but those are the folks where it's like, yeah, this could really ding, especially in the case of spouses. The surviving spouse, you don't want to run down assets too much when the first person has a long-term care event, such that the surviving spouse is now destitute or close to it. It's challenging, and with the costs of premiums, like you mentioned, just continually going up, it's a hard pill to swallow, and people have different pain points of how much they're comfortable paying every year for a use it or lose it type of benefit. It's tricky.
Yeah.
All right, so Roth conversions, we already sort of touched on this. You at least kicked around the idea of converting it all in one fell swoop, get it done with, eat the tax bite for that year and move on. Sounds like you did not go that route. So what are you doing, if anything, around conversions at this point?
Yeah, I don't have the nerve for a mega Roth conversion. And so I do plan to start doing some Roth conversions. And I really can't delay much just because, right now we're outside the IRMA window and we're not collecting Social Security, and I'd rather start doing it before then. For various tax reasons, it didn't make sense last year. But I think no matter what our situation turns out to be this year, we'll probably do some Roth conversions. And I might, I can't justify this with any sort of mathematical analysis for you. But in terms of the amount, I might simply base it on the cash that I have that I want to spend on the taxes. So if my business generates some free cash flow, I might invest it by converting an amount that basically gobbles up that extra cash in the taxes I would pay, because I'm not going to pay the taxes out of the IRA itself. Yeah. So that's likely what we'll do this year. That's my thinking.
Okay. And that is a plenty defensible answer to back into your budget you're comfortable spending on taxes and solve for how much conversion that allows you to get.
Well, the other aspect is my wife and I, one of us is likely to die before the other. And of course, the survivor could eventually get remarried and be in a joint married tax situation. But for some number of years, it's likely that one of us is going to be, and maybe for a long time, a single filer, and so that's going to affect rates, and which I think a lot of people forget to think about when they're analyzing Roth conversions. So I think conversions, even regardless of what tax bracket we end up in this year, at least to some extent, makes some sense.
My other view, and so much around this conversion analysis can't be quantified, or at least software can try to quantify it, but just by making you use the word truckload of assumptions, right? And relatively minor changes in those assumptions could have dramatically different outpacks on the potential value or savings to be realized from conversion. So I don't try to fool myself or others into saying, you will save $327,000 in lifetime tax. Like, no, I know that's wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of it's qualitative. A lot of it's sort of hedging yourself, like you said. If one spouse predeceases the other much sooner than expected, you have the collapsed tax rates that you have to now deal with as a single person. But my other view, and I try not to get too into this view with clients, because I feel like in my job I need to be a little more pragmatic and objective about it. But I think, if anything, people won't regret having converted. The future self of someone won't regret having more Roth assets at the time. So if you're on the fence about conversions, maybe go ahead and do some. Yeah, it may sting a little bit this year paying the taxes, but the future you isn't going to be like, oh man, I wish I had less Roth assets right now.
Yeah. It definitely makes decisions easier to make.
Yes.
As you age, for sure. And I agree. It's hard to imagine I would regret it.
Yeah. Personal story. So a few years ago, my wife and I are pretty good sized income. We were high up in the tax brackets between federal and New Jersey, which isn't cheap. And I did I don't remember what it was, like a $50,000 conversion. and all in taxes were like 40 something percent. My wife's like, "What are you doing, you dummy?" I was like, I don't know. It just feels right. It was a lot of tax at the time, but here we are 2 years later. I do not regret it one bit. I forgot about the pain of paying taxes then. I'm happy to see my Roth IRA balance that much larger now. And she got over the initial shock of the tax bill as well. And it's like, oh, this actually feels pretty good to have this Roth money now. So for what that's worth.
And also, if you pay the tax out, from your checking account, from a taxable account,
yeah.
right? The benefit of the Roth grows over time. And so that can also offset, maybe even if the rates ended up being the same, or even if you paid a slightly higher rate than you would have, 30 years later when you pulled the money out, you could still end up better off. And that's another factor in the mega Roth conversion analysis, by the way, is because you move it all now, and then you get, again, assuming you pay taxes from outside the IRA, you get that. It's a slow benefit. It doesn't happen overnight, but even at my age, if that sits there for 20 years, that adds to the benefit.
Definitely. Yeah, and I'm 47 now, so I don't have the option of paying taxes out of the IRA, or I do, but there'd be a additional 10% tax on it.
Right.
It does get more challenging as people who are 59 and a half, then you weigh, do you have the cash sitting around in bank accounts to pay taxes? If not, you don't really have a choice other than pay out of the IRA. Is that still worth it for you at the time? And my view is yes, probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have we have a solo 401k, which is where we would, and that complicates it and adds another element of complication. But one option may be to simply move it to a Roth solo 401k. Moving it to an IRA gets complicated, particularly if you're not 59 and a half. Mm-hmm. But we'll figure that out.
So your house sounds like you are debt-free at this point. So you own your home. Plans for staying? We sort of touched on this before. It sounds like you have no immediate thoughts or plans, but plan on staying in the area, moving, downsizing, get a second home, whatever, snowbird or something?
So no plans to move. We do have we're building a second home.
Okay.
But we don't plan, at least we have no plans to move from our current home. If we live long enough, I'm sure we will. It's not an easy home to age in, a lot of stairs.
Okay.
So I could see us moving at some point, but no plans to move. We like the area. We're 5 minutes from our daughter. We're 20 minutes from our son. I like Northern Virginia, particularly since I no longer have to do the commute into DC.
Right.
And the cost of living's a bit rough here, but we've been here over 30 years, so eventually you sort of just, like, I guess we're that proverbial frog in boiling water. We've completely boiled at this point. we don't notice as much anymore. But So no plans to go anywhere. We might downsize at some point.
Okay.
I definitely look at the equity as sort of my safety net.
Yeah.
Because when I do my analysis and chance of success, I'm not incorporating equity into the analysis. So I do sort of use that as hopefully a fail safe. We'll see. We'll see. But yeah.
And that's a great point. For most, if not all, financial planning softwares, when you look at like a Monte Carlo, when it shows you your chance of success or whatever they choose to label it, that's just in the context of your investable assets not running out. Even if they do, you still have whatever your home equity is, which in all these models is just kind of there on the side, right? So not that should ever be a first line of defense to cover emergencies or whatever, but for many people, you can unlock some of it from downsizing. Reverse mortgage is an option to tap it. So just, food for thought. Monte Carlos aren't necessarily as bad as they seem, even if they look bad on the surface, because there's often more going on to take into the context.
Yeah, and I hadn't thought about it, but and I use Bolden as probably my main tool, and I know you use Right Capital?
E-money.
Oh, E-money, okay. Yeah. But you just to see the effects, you could certainly model a reverse mortgage, just to see how it affects your chance of success, or model, moving, and downsizing. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've actually run those numbers for us. Not a bad idea, but we don't have plans. I definitely don't have plans for reverse mortgage, and downsizing maybe someday, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you do plan to stay there, my oldest daughter's a junior in high school, and one of the top 3 schools on her list is George Washington in D.C., and we don't
Foggy
know
Bottom.
anyone. But yeah, cool area. We don't know anyone who's around there, so if she does go to school there and you're still there, we can have her hang out with Uncle Rob for dinner or something.
Absolutely.
One
I
day.
could be her emergency close by contact.
Perfect. Thank you.
No.
I'll let you know how that pans out. But,
Well, sometimes that just might be an emergency lunch to get out of
yeah.
away from school. But
Right.
George Washington is a great school. My wife went
Yeah.
there for her master's.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we all liked it. She loved it. My wife and I liked it, and so it's very much high on our list at this point. All right. Most people, well, everyone who knows you knows this well, but if you can just sort of summarize, as if people don't know anything about you, what's your investment approach in terms of what you invest in, rebalancing? Now, you already mentioned index funds. It's clear that that's your overall view, but how about things like rebalancing and other kind of tactical things as it relates to how you manage your investments?
So I've worked hard to simplify my portfolio, in part because of the day when I can't handle it or I'm gone. So in terms of it, most of it's index funds, and it's basically total U.S. stock. I do have a small cap fund, both Vanguard. I have a total international fund, also Vanguard, and those are in my taxable account, my wife and I's taxable accounts. And in our retirement accounts, it's primarily a Vanguard retirement income target date fund.
Okay.
I'd have to look it up, but I think it's a 40% stock, 60% bonds, a 40-60 or 30-70. My goal is roughly 75-25. And when you take that target date fund and you mix it with the 3 index funds we have in our taxable account, it roughly comes out to 75-25.
Okay.
And my plan at this point is not to rebalance. The target date fund, it stopped changing its asset allocation, so it's kind of there permanently as far as I know. I'll keep an eye on it, but so it's going to rebalance on its own. I'm not going to sell index funds, which all have substantial gains. We've owned them for a while. I'm not going to sell them to rebalance. I could rebalance if I felt I needed to in the retirement accounts by selling some of the target date and putting it in something else, which could happen. I don't know. But I don't think I'll need to. And then we have some individual stocks, primarily Apple and Berkshire. And I don't know that I'll buy more individual stocks. I really like value investing. I follow a lot of investors, and I like looking at stocks. I like looking at companies. The problem is it's just too time consuming to do it right.
Yeah.
It's not time consuming to buy a company. You can do that in 40 seconds. But it's time consuming to do it right. It's time consuming to find good companies to buy, to evaluate them properly, and then to wait for a good price. And so as much as I enjoy it, which is why I bought Apple when I did, at least at the moment, other than additional investments in Berkshire, which I'll probably make from time to time, because to me, it's just a large cap, primarily U.S. stock fund with no dividends. So I'll continue to buy some of that. I don't think I'll be adding other companies.
Okay.
And that's about it. I keep cash for the most part in like a V-bill, Vanguard, T-bill fund, or Schwab has one, SGov, I think. I keep cash usually in that kind of fund at the moment where I keep it. And that's it. So it's a pretty simple portfolio. And I would use that portfolio whether I had 100,000, a million. I would use that portfolio with $100 million in assets.
Yeah.
Which, in case my mother-in-law is watching, I do not have $100 million in assets.
But if you did.
But the point is, it's I always bristle at this idea of how do certain people invest? What if you're you've got 8 figures, 9 figures? What if you're a billionaire? There's no magic to this.
No, I think the fancy investments in most of my corporate life prior to starting the advisory firm was in due diligence and analysis and risk management of alternative investments, hedge funds, private equity funds. So I saw some of the most complicated, coolest, interesting investment products and strategies out there. vast majority of them really don't do anything special compared to the plain vanilla, cheap, easy index fund type investments. So I heard a saying somewhere, I'm not going to be able to remember it verbatim, but something along the lines of, those fancy investments may have you win the cocktail party, but they're not going to have you win at investing.
Yeah.
It's cool to say you have it, and it's a fascinating topic at parties, but otherwise, what are they really doing for you? So I agree with you. You got $1 million, you got $10 million. The investment approach doesn't need to be much, if any, different.
Yeah.
So just quick question. You mentioned that sounds like the only bond exposure you have is in the Vanguard Retirement Income Fund, which I do think terminates at 30% stock. Like that's its forever allocation.
Yeah.
Is that in your IRA for asset location reasons? Because the bond interest okay. Just confirming for those listening.
And the nice thing about that fund is that it includes tips, which not all target date or balance funds do. I wish there was a bond fund. I'm not aware of one. Like, the Bloomberg aggregate U.S. bond doesn't have any exposure to tips.
No.
But in any event, the Vanguard target date funds, at least that one does. I'm not sure if the longer dated ones do, but I wish it had more tips than it does. I would probably have 50-50 in terms of bonds between nominal and inflation protected. It's my ideal, but it's got enough, keeps me happy, and I sacrifice the rest for the sake of simplicity.
Okay. If you want more tips, here's one. Don't look directly at the sun. Right?
Nice.
Oh, man, yeah.
Nice.
This is so bad.
I see what you did there.
Thank you, yeah. And my grandfather used to say, never play poker with someone with white shoes. I never understood that. Do you know what that means?
I have no idea.
Okay, I don't know.
But Mark Twain comes to mind when you say that. I'm not sure, why, but...
Maybe I'll look into that one day. Okay, last few questions here. This may not really apply because you're still sort of working, but the transition from going from accumulating to decumulating, are you actually decumulating, or it sounds like the income you're getting from the business still covers what you need day to day?
Right.
Okay.
I was at that point when I first sold my business, and it scared me to death.
So
I hate
scared you? Why? Because just out of principle spending it, or did you think you didn't quite have enough based on your analysis and stuff?
No. Any sort of analysis, 4% rule or whatever you want, we were fine.
Okay.
I just don't like the idea of my balance going down.
Right.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about that, though? If and when you do stop having any sort of work-related income, how are you going to address that?
I'm just going to grin and bear it.
Don't have a choice, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, our the percentage that we would need to spend is low enough that we might, in most years, still see our balance go up. But I will say this: I'm not one who's, not spending and there's all these things we'd like to do, but no, we're not going to do it because we don't like to spend. That's not us. But we also don't spend frivolously, and I'm not going to spend it. The whole die with zero concept. I don't really embrace that. We should write a book together, Die with Millions. I mean, it's like, I like the Warren Buffett model. Continue to do work you love, make money, give most of it away. I just follow it with far fewer zeros. That's all.
Right. Yeah. That's a good model to go after, actually. I think the work you love is key. Don't work if it's a soul-sapping job that, crushes your spirit every day. But
it helps sort of me that I work for myself.
Yeah, right.
So I don't really answer to anyone. And the business that I have doesn't answer to anyone. It's not like I've got 100 employees and vendors that I have to get inventory from. And, it's a very low-maintenance business.
That's great. Hopefully your boss is pretty cool.
She's all right.
Again, you're not quite traditionally retired, but was there anything you thought would be more difficult or challenging about being retired than it actually is, or at least you transitioning from corporate life to whatever, however you classify your life now? Is there anything you thought you'd struggle with or would be more difficult, come to find out, hey, this ain't so bad?
No.
Okay.
I was pretty much looking forward to it. Again, figuring out my purpose and what I want to do with my time, that turned out to be more challenging than I thought it would be. But I don't think there was anything that I was sort of dreading that turned out different. But I wasn't dreading a lot.
Yeah.
I wasn't anxious about it. I guess again, the shift from saving to spending, which is now kind of reversed for us, at least for the time being, that was challenging. But again, that was more of a psychological, hurdle to clear, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And since you're not formally retired in the traditional sense, this may not apply, but was there any advice you were given that ended up being like, wow, that was really bad, poor advice, it just doesn't hold, etc.?
Broad picture, no. I've been given some bad tax advice in the past. And fortunately, one was really bad when I sold my business, and I ended up not following it. And I'm so glad I didn't follow it.
This was the dough roller business?
Yeah.
Okay.
This tax person had some business structure that effectively they claimed would allow me not to pay any taxes on the gain. And it involved multiple closely held companies and transferring assets from this company to that company, and then loans that never get paid off. And I remember at the time thinking, and I studied it in depth. I hired a lawyer to look at it. And one could argue that technically it followed the rules. I'm not so sure it followed the spirit of the rules. And I just thought, I'm going to basically spend the rest of my life paying interest from one company that I own to another company, round trip. That can't be kosher. And I remember at the time, because we're talking a lot of money to pay, on the sale of this business. Our son was in the Marines. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, my son is, potentially, unfortunately he didn't, but, you go into the Marines, you recognize you may be making the ultimate sacrifice for your country. The least I can do, particularly this, the result of this sale, success, and I don't have to work again, I can pay my taxes. So I fired that guy and wrote a big check. It was hard to fit all the numbers into the box,
yeah.
But I got it there, and I sent off the money, and I don't regret that one bit. I am relieved that I didn't follow that advice.
Good. Did you ask for a big Publishers Clearinghouse check to fit in all the zeros you had to
big
put
thing
in
like this? I could take a picture. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it was just a tiny drop in the bucket for Uncle Sam. But for me, it was a lot of money. But
yeah.
And that's the way it goes. I think, again, I go back to Warren Buffett, because, he says, look, we're paying a truckload of taxes on behalf of Berkshire, and I hope it keeps up. I hope we pay a lot more taxes, because it just means the business is doing well.
Right.
And so.
Agreed. Having to pay tax means, good for you. You have or made a lot of income or received a lot of income. Yeah. Different people have different views on that, but, don't pay more taxes than you're legally supposed to, but the spirit does come into play. And there's lots of questionable tactics out there. I saw a pitch on Facebook ad. I couldn't make sense of it, about you can convert whatever, $1 million and pay no taxes. Hold on. So I actually reached out to the guy, I had a call with him, and it was one of the most convoluted, I don't use the word scheme because that implies that it's illegal, but it was like buying land somewhere out in the remote West where there's some grant where you can donate it to the government and get a big deduction for it. You're also buying into some oil drilling partnership where now there's a big upfront bonus deduction. I'm like, this is way too complicated. Maybe it works. Legally, yeah, it looked like it worked. The spirit was questionable, and just the complexity was off the charts. It's like, no. I may know
the ad you're referring to. I think I've seen it, but maybe I'm thinking of a different one. Yeah, life is too short for that nonsense. Yeah. Who needs that? I would just be awake at night worried that eventually this is all going to unravel and I'm going to owe back taxes and penalties. It's just not worth it.
Agreed.
It's not worth it.
Alrighty, and finally, if you can give only one piece of advice or guidance to others about retirement planning, what would it be?
Well, I think for non-financial, I do think it's important to have some understanding of why you're retiring. What is it you want to do? You're not going to be able to answer everything till you do it, probably. Most people, I don't know, I couldn't. But I think it's a mistake to think retirement is what we do. We're 65, we're 60, we're set, whatever, and this is what we do. It may be what you choose to do, but I've kind of changed my view on retirement. I actually think continuing to work, if you love what you're doing, is maybe the best model. Again, not for everyone. I get it. Some people just want to go fish. I got it. But that's, you shouldn't, ask a lot of what if questions. That's how I think about it. Well, what if I didn't retire? Or what if I retired from this job, but what if I found something else I like to do part-time? Or, dream a little bit beyond what you think you have to do. Financially, I think it is important, whether you're a do-it-yourselfer like I am, or you hire a retirement planning specialist, to have some kind of financial plan so that you're on the right track. And the thing I would say about that is, don't assume that every CFP is equally talented in retirement planning. It's a very special kind of planning.
Yeah.
And so just make sure you're working with someone that's built hundreds of retirement plans for people, or thousands, a lot, because the planners learn as they go, like we all do.
Yeah.
And so if you're not going to do it yourself, find someone who's got a lot of experience putting together retirement plans, and don't pay assets under management. not for a retirement plan.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You get a retirement plan for a flat fee or an hourly fee.
Yeah, fee for service. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Extremely helpful and insightful, and I'm confident a lot of people listening will get a lot out of this and will be fascinated to be a fly on the wall to hear more about your story. So thank you, Rob, for coming on and sharing.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it.
And anything else, I'll be sure to link your YouTube channel. Anything else you want to make sure we give a shout out to folks here in closing?
Under every video, there's a link to my newsletter. It's free. It goes out every Sunday morning. That's probably the best way they can reach out to me, is through that newsletter.
All right. Very good. Will do. Rob, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you.